I watched every Oscar-nominated movie for the fifth year in a row, so you don't have to. I slogged through all 50 movies in about 75 hours to find the ones that you should watch and the ones that you can skip. Every year, I end up finding a movie or five that I had never heard of and would never have watched if it weren't for this Academy Award nomination that I end up loving. And for the first time this year, I'm going to call out one movie out of the 50 that every single person needs to see. Now, while I don't think it is the best movie of the year, I think it is probably the most important movie of the year. And without further ado, let's do 50 rapid fire reviews. I love that friendships come in all shapes and sizes. Just because you're an old white woman doesn't mean that you can't have a lot in common with a young black man. This was a very polished, short film with a good heart. Years after losing their children to school shootings, several families invite photographers into their homes to explore the untouched bedrooms of those lost children. This is a beautiful tribute to those children, but as expected, is very sad. Easily the most beautifully animated film of 2025. This is a French movie that's in English and looks like a Japanese Studio Ghibli film. The story moves quick and is full of heart. It's about a young girl who befriends a young boy from the future who arrives to her time by rainbow. The bumbling doofuses portrayed by Will Ferrell, Andy Samberg, and Flea were a bit too over the top, but even their insanity could not ruin the heart of this movie, and it nails the ending. Being a war journalist is a very important job. Without it, we wouldn't have nearly the understanding that we do about the horrors of war. In 2025, it feels more important than ever. It's a job that takes a fearless person. If the bullets don't get you, the people who don't want the world to know the truth might. It was nice to learn a little bit more about Brent Renault and his sacrifices. There is no denying the visual effects are once again the best that I have ever seen. However, this is the third 3-hour Avatar movie released since 2009, and they all kind of run together. While the first movie was revolutionary, by now I feel like I'm just watching the same thing over and over again. If you like the first two Avatar films, you're gonna like this one. But even though I liked it, it just doesn't need to exist. I absolutely see some masterful filmmaking here. The sets, the direction, and the editing were excellent. The dialogue was witty and flowed well. Ethan Hawke was nearly unrecognizable and deserves his Oscar nomination. My problem is that Hawke's character was insufferable, and the movie is about a washed-up showtunes writer from the early 1940s, which is such a niche subject that I think it's going to have a hard time finding an audience. I have historically not been a huge fan of Yorgos Lanthimos' movies, so I came into this expecting to hate it, and it ended up surpassing all of my expectations. It is his most normal movie to date, and he doesn't use any of the weird fisheye lens stuff that I really didn't like in his other movies. The story revolves around a greasy conspiracy theorist who sounds smart but has some really dumb beliefs, and it also revolves around the CEO that he captures because he thinks that she is an alien. It's not a comfortable movie, but I found it to be tense and I loved the dialogue. A butcher is forced to stand up for himself when he is accused by a coworker of a fireable offense. This has a very powerful message about rumors and standing up for yourself. And once you find out what is actually happening, you can't help but laugh. Sometimes it really doesn't take much for people to show their true colors. I didn't really love this short film about a swimmer remembering being a professional swimmer during World War II, but it is hard to deny how striking the animation style is. Water has never looked better in an animated movie than it has here. This is another tough watch about a group of protesters in Israel who hold signs of the children in Gaza who have been killed during the war. We don't see any disturbing imagery, we don't hear any disturbing stories, but seeing these beautiful kids and knowing that they are gone for no reason is just heartbreaking. In the movie Contact, Jodie Foster says they should have sent a poet when trying to describe what an alien world looks like. In Come See Me in the Good Light, we get to hear a poet's perspective of what it is like living out your final months and years with terminal cancer. The documentary follows poet Andrea Gibson and their wife through the ups and downs of cancer. The documentary is a tearjerker, but hearing Andrea tell her story on her terms in her poetic voice elevates this to must-see territory. A documentary about a woman named Sarah who is inspired to run for councilwoman in her small village in Iran. And she wins. Unfortunately, because she's a woman, her brothers and the other men in the village will try nearly anything to take away her power. This is another example of people being held down by their gender that is all too common across the world. If you don't know who Diane Warren is, you owe it to yourself to look her up. She is a one-of-a-kind personality who beats to her own drum. She is also a prolific songwriter who wrote probably half of the biggest hits of the 80s and 90s, and all of her writing credits are solo credits, and she owns the publishing rights to them. She is one of the most successful songwriters of all time. She has been nominated for so many Academy Awards for Best Song, but has never won. This documentary is basically just her and her friends pleading for her to finally win the award. Now, she does deserve an Oscar, there's no doubt about that, but not this year. That K-pop Demon Hunter song is just too good. This is a mid-tier Pixar movie about a kid who's obsessed with being abducted by aliens, and then he gets abducted by aliens. This is a very cute movie and has a lot of great homages to 70s and 80s and 90s extraterrestrial movies. It even has some Carl Sagan voiceover, which always makes everything better. But it follows familiar beats and doesn't really break any new ground in the genre. I have never watched an F1 race in my life, and I was mesmerized from the beginning of this to the end of it. New technologies were created specifically to shoot from inside the car for this movie. It has the same director and the same vibe as Top Gun Maverick, which is another way better than it should be movie. F1 is kind of a formulaic, big-budget blockbuster action movie, but there are so many cool shots from inside the car, and it's so much fun that it's still worth checking out. A modern retelling of The Giving Tree, but this time it features a bear instead of a little boy. It's beautifully animated, really cute, and emotionally moving. Every Guillermo del Toro movie looks incredible. There's no doubt about that. Everything is polished and technically perfect. It has a very distinct look to it. Now, the story of Frankenstein, we've heard it a million times before. This one feels a little different. I honestly don't know how much of what we see in this movie is from the original book because it's been decades since I've read that original book. But even though it looks great and is a fresh take on a classic story, I didn't really love it as much as I wanted to. I'm in the minority though. Everyone else seems to really love this one. Every time I watch a movie based on William Shakespeare, I remember I'm too stupid to understand what he wrote. The movie looks great and has incredible acting. I did find it a bit slow, and to me it almost felt like it exists just to be emotional torture porn. This movie wasn't really my jam, but I can see why people really love it. If you are a parent, this is a must-see movie. It shows the struggles of a mother dealing with an unbearable amount of stress, raising a daughter with a medical condition while her husband is away for months for work and their apartment is destroyed, requiring her to live in a cheap motel. I think Rose Byrne gave the best acting performance of the year. She does a great job playing someone who's on the brink of breaking. A chance meeting sets off a series of events with an ever-growing cast of people trying to determine if the man that they have kidnapped is an abuser who tormented them years earlier. I wanted a bit more out of this, but I can't tell you exactly what it was that it was missing. And even though I didn't absolutely love it, I do think that the final scene is one of the best final scenes of the entire year. This was just silly and felt more like a skit that you'd see on Saturday Night Live than an Oscar-nominated short film. It's worth watching just to hear the character names, though. While it is a period piece, which is not something I'm usually into, it really could have taken place during any time. It is hard for me to objectively review this movie because I have a huge chip on my shoulder that with each new Jurassic Park movie, it waters down the legacy of the original, which was a generational masterpiece. On the surface, this movie is fine, and the CGI does look good, but I still think the original CGI from the movie from over 30 years ago looks just as good or better. I would have probably liked this more if this was the first Jurassic Park movie and not the seventh. Of all of the Oscar-nominated movies, this is the one that was the hardest for me to get through. It is nearly 3 hours long, and it takes place over decades about a man who grew to be one of Japan's greatest kabuki actors. While the film looks great and the costumes and makeup are exceptional, it has too many characters, and I didn't really connect with any of them. And when it ended, I didn't feel like I knew anything more about the art of kabuki. This movie holds a special place in my heart, as it is the first movie that my daughter has ever really gotten into on her own. The songs have been on repeat in my house for months. This was a cultural phenomenon and features probably the best soundtrack of the entire year. It's fast-paced, has great animation, and quite a lot of heart. It's way better than it should be. This one touched me personally because the character of Amelie reminded me quite a bit of my daughter. She's obsessed with water, learning Asian characters, and is quite precocious. I love stories where the animator thinks they understand how the world works and view things through a very unique lens. This was a cute movie that was almost tragic. I really hated the character of Marty Mouser in Marty Supreme. He was a fast talker who thought he was smarter than everyone else, but boy, oh boy, did I love watching him get into trouble. This movie moves so fast and is constantly unpredictable. It's one of those movies about something that shouldn't be stressful, in this case table tennis, but it is a nail-biter the entire way through. We've all heard stories about Russia and how the government forces nationalism on its residents. Here we get to see firsthand how that happens in the school system. The footage was captured by a very brave teacher who had to smuggle the footage out of the country in order for the world to see. Hearing stories is one thing, but seeing them unfold in real time in first person puts things in a whole new perspective. If I didn't see the army coming into schools to train kids on how to use automatic weapons, I wouldn't have believed it. Similar to Marty Supreme, this movie moves fast. It has a killer cast of characters led by a modern-day version of the dude from The Big Lebowski, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. Sean Penn steals every scene that he's in as the evil Captain Lockjaw, and Teyana Taylor and Chase Infinity bring so much energy to every scene that they are in. This is a movie that came out at the perfect time. It isn't about the current political climate in America because it's based on a 35-year-old novel, but it sure does feel like it's based on America in 2026. I have no idea what this movie was about. It was just 15 minutes of the rhythmic clopping of donkey hooves as they walked around some giant telescopes. It looked nice, but honestly, that clopping kind of put me to sleep. This one really spoke to me. As someone who has a list of a million things that I would do if I didn't have to work, I found this both charming and inspiring. It is essentially a list of things a man would do once he retires, told through a beautiful poem. The story of two daughters and their estranged father who is trying to make amends during the last years of his life. There is a lot of symbolism here about broken relationships and mending told through the walls of the family home. Everyone is raving about how great the acting and the story is, but it didn't really move me how I expected it to. It was fine, but I think there was better acting and there were better stories in several of the other nominees this year. Director Ryan Coogler paints an amazing landscape of the Deep South in the early 1900s. This genre-bending story takes place over a 24-hour period as two twin brothers move back to Mississippi to open a juke joint. The production design is impeccable. Everything feels humid and wet. The acting is top-notch and the direction and editing is perfect. The story takes you on a journey through music and features incredible symbolism on how black culture is stolen by white people and all of the soul is removed. I think this is the movie that's going to live the longest after 2025 and be revisited the most of all of the nominees. A couple of years ago, a movie called Io Capitano came out of Italy about two boys from Senegal going on a journey across the dangerous deserts of Africa. Surat is similar to that movie, but not nearly as good. A father and son travel with a group of music festival regulars through the Moroccan desert to look for the man's lost daughter. The movie is kind of slow, but it has some great wide landscape shots of the deserts of northern Africa. There isn't a ton of dialogue, and I found the entire thing to be a little bit of a letdown, but it does feature some truly shocking scenes, one of which may be the most shocking scene from any movie I saw in 2025. It left my mouth agape for at least 30 seconds. This was a cute and charming little movie. Hugh Jackman and Kate Hudson were both likable as the married couple who made a career out of impersonating Neil Diamond. I think if I were more of a Neil Diamond fan, I would have liked this a bit more. The songs are good, as is the acting. My biggest issue is that many of the truly dramatic, life-changing events came and went with little impact to the story. Still a cute movie, but not quite in must-see territory for me. This is the type of documentary that just infuriates me. The corruption of the Alabama Department of Corrections exposed here is brutal. And I know it isn't just Alabama that has these same issues. We can all agree that prison is a necessary evil, but no one deserves to live in the conditions shown in this documentary. The prisoners we meet are all well-spoken and willing to stand up for what is right, and I hope that this film makes a difference in their lives. A short film following a day in the life of a security guard at an abortion clinic. Tracy takes her job seriously to make sure that the patients are treated with respect and are safe from the protesters who harass them on a daily basis. I personally think Matthew McConaughey was miscast in this. The camera work was too shaky, there were way too many close-up shots, it was too dark, there were too many characters who only existed to explain the plot, and much of the acting felt kind of amateurish. But you know what? I was on the edge of my seat and it had my heart racing the entire movie, and I loved every minute of it, except for a couple of scenes that were kind of heartbreaking. This is a true story, although there were definitely some embellishments. I just don't know what those embellishments were. It felt like a Michael Bay movie, just full of over-the-top action and explosions, and it could not have been more fun. In my opinion, every documentary moving forward needs to be told this way. Everything shown in this was either actual police cam body footage or security footage. While I'm sure there are ways to still edit the story to tell a specific narrative, it felt very nonpartisan. We saw things unfold in real time. Everyone involved did the right thing. The cops acted how they should have acted, as did the neighbors, and yet tragedy still struck. Some people are just crazy, and they're good at hiding it and following the rules until it's too late to do anything about it. The Perfect Neighbor is sad and infuriating, and it's something everyone needs to see. I know it's hard to believe that I didn't live through the 70s based on all of this white hair, but I imagine that the way the secret agent looked is the way the actual 1970s looked. The colors just popped. There were so many yellow cars for some reason, and everybody was always smoking. The story unfolds slowly, and it takes quite a bit of time to figure out exactly what's going on. And along the way, you get to meet a kooky cast of quirky characters, and it's never boring. And then for some reason, at some point, there's a severed leg chasing people around, and it doesn't at all fit in with the rest of the movie, but it just still works. There's nothing better than a good short film that has no agenda. It's just there to entertain. This is a story of a bunch of drunk guys in a bar betting who is the best singer. It's full of surprises, and the setting is so dark and dank and smoky that you can smell it. The makeup in this is so good, Dwayne Johnson was nearly unrecognizable. I didn't really connect with the story of the drug-addicted UFC fighter who had an annoyingly calm and almost creepy demeanor outside of the ring. If you're into UFC, you're probably going to like this more than I did. Another story that's just here to entertain. I like the animation style and actually laughed a few times at the antics of these three sisters who live on a tiny island and all fight over the big sailor man who shows up looking for a place to stay. I'm a little bit embarrassed that it took me nearly 45 minutes to realize that this was a dark retelling of a classic story that literally everybody knows. I'm honestly surprised this was nominated for an Academy Award because it's a movie full of body horror, and that's not something that usually gets critical acclaim. There are some truly gross scenes in this movie. This is the movie I think everybody needs to see. It's a hard watch, but it is necessary, and if you only watch one of the 50 nominees, this is the one I suggest. It's a story of a 911/Red Cross style call center in Palestine who receives a call from a 6-year-old girl who's trapped in a car as Israeli tanks are approaching. The entire story takes place from within the call center, and the calls we hear are not reenactments. They are the actual calls from this young girl talking with the call center employees. The way that the actors are intercut with the actual people at the call center was masterfully done. There's a bit of overacting, but honestly, I'm not sure that I would have acted any differently if put in this same situation. And it's hard to call this my favorite movie of 2025 because it is such a hard watch. So I would just say that it is the most important movie of 2025. Train Dreams is full of beautiful cinematography. It's a quiet and contemplative movie about a man who worked for the railroad to support his family in the early 1900s. The story has this calming demeanor throughout, even though there are many bad things that happen. It somehow never really feels like a downer, and it has a nearly perfect ending. I'm not typically a fan of this type of movie, but I found this one quite touching. This is a hard movie to explain. It kind of feels like a Black Mirror episode mixed with a pretentious 1990s perfume commercial. The story follows a rich woman and her favorite sales clerk. But in this reality, you don't exchange money for goods. If you want to buy something, you just take several slaps in the face from the salesperson. And also, kissing is punishable by death. It didn't seem that strange while I was watching it, but trying to describe it, I realized how truly weird it is. A cute documentary about a retirement community that only allows struggling artists to live there. We get to meet several singers and dancers who are now in their 80s and 90s talk lovingly about performing in their prime. We even get to see video of them performing in their prime. And we get to see the joy on their face as they continue to perform into the twilight years of their life. A killer premise about a town where all but one student in the same class go missing on the same night. What starts off as a mystery and a drama quickly turns into a quirky, over-the-top horror movie that has a crazy amount of twists and turns. It is a totally unique story and is told from the POV of several different characters. It isn't quite like any other movie that came out this year, but it's still very accessible and features a great cast and a very creepy and fun performance by Amy Madigan. Zootopia was one of my top 10 movies of 2016. It felt like prime Pixar, even though it isn't a Pixar movie. It was full of great characters and a ton of punny humor. Zootopia 2 is more of the exact same. I have no complaints, but it just didn't have that same charm because it didn't feel completely and totally fresh. I did really love the walrus characters though. And there you have it. Hopefully I've inspired you to add at least 1 or 2 or 25 movies to your watch list.